Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Hi, this is Scott Ford coming with another live stream. This one, we're going to talk about troubleshooting operating systems. This is part one, and we are broadcasting live here on the 17th, April 17th. That's the reason why the Easter shirt is on at 7:41 Central Time. So, of course, I have my coffee with me. So what I want to do in this live stream is talk about some of the troubleshooting that you find in Windows. Now, this is not if you're looking for a video that explains all of troubleshooting in Microsoft, this isn't it. We are covering the objectives that the CompTIA exam, the 1101 or specifically 1102 exam wants you to know in order to be ready for the test. So this is kind of covering the general problems that you can find in operating systems and some of the causes and how to repair it. But if you're looking for a specific video, for example, let's say you have an error code and a BSOD. If you don't know what BSOD is, you're going to learn in this presentation. Then you would need a different video. This is kind of, again, focusing on A+ material. So with that being said, let's actually hop into this. And for those of you who've never joined us for a live cast, I'll tell you right now, PowerPoint will crash at least once. It'll crash at least once on us. So, troubleshooting operating systems, again, this is part one. And the objectives we're going to cover in this particular series on looking at troubleshooting is identify common symptoms of Windows issues, perform common Windows troubleshooting steps, use Windows built-in tools to track resources, to explain the functions of the registry and hives, and access Windows Registry and perform basic adjustments. So, common symptoms of Windows issues. You are expected, according to the objectives, to know these. So, you're going to need to know all of these. You're going to need to know common causes of them and common fixes for them. Now, don't worry. A lot of this is kind of common sense and not that hard to do. Plus, as a computer tech, you're going to need to know these because this does pop up quite frequently depending on the system you're using. So, we're going to look at the dreaded BSOD, the blue screen of death, sluggish performance, boot problems, frequent shutdowns, services not starting, applications crashing, low memory warnings, USB controller resource warnings, system instability, no operating system found, that's what OS stands for, slow profile loading, and time drift. So let's, again, these are specifically mentioned on the 1102 objectives for the CompTIA exam. Uh-oh. Oh, crap. Wait a minute. How could I be broadcasting if I have a BSOD? Well, let's find out. So this is a BSOD, or the dreaded blue screen of death. Now, for those of you who are into computers, one of the things you hear us older techs talk about is back in the old days, back in the old days, back in the old days. Well, we're going to talk about something that will eventually be known as back in the old days, and I'll let you know what I mean in just a few seconds. But first, let's take a closer look at what a BSOD is. So it's called the blue screen of death. It's a non-maskable interrupt. It's a stop error. We also call these as a Windows sudden restart or shutdown screen, or just what the heck is going on. It appears when there is a system error that Windows can't recover from. In the old days, Windows really couldn't recover from a lot of stuff. Now we see Windows being able to recover from small little hiccups. So the BSOD, I would say, isn't, in my own personal opinion, the BSOD is not nearly as common as it used to be. So sometimes this happens just because it's part of the joys of using Windows. So you will eventually see a BSOD a couple of times in your lifetime. So it's again, not that uncommon. Now, when it happens frequently on a device, when it happens frequently on a computer, there's probably some underlying problem. There's probably something that's causing this BSOD. So when the BSOD happens, it's typically an event, and it's written to something called a system log found within something called Event Viewer. The Event Viewer logs all sorts of things that happens to the computers. If you find the error in a system log and there's an error number associated with it, you can actually put that error code number into a Google search or a DuckDuckGo search or what have you, and see if you can find out more information of what caused it. And Windows will try to restart itself. Now, like I said a second ago, remember I said, us old techs keep saying the old days and the old days and the old days. Well, here is where something that you're learning this now, that maybe not far from now, you'll be talking about in the old days as well, which is Microsoft is reportedly going to remove the design of our old friend, the BSOD. They're getting rid of that old blue screen with the frowny face and a QR code. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to use something like a black screen that you commonly see during updates. So, again, I don't know why they're changing it. We like our BSOD. Well, not really, but it gives us comfort in the knowledge that we know what it is. But here's a funny little story for you regarding a BSOD. So I taught computer maintenance back from 04 to 08. And we had a screen capture of a BSOD, and I was out, I think I was up in A&M taking a class or orientation or something. And my computer students thought it would be a funny prank, which it was, to take the BSOD and turn it into a screensaver, make it a graphic that was used by the screensaver. And what they had done is they had timed the computers all around my classroom within like a second interval. So when the computer went to sleep or went to screensaver mode, the BSOD would pop up as the picture. So when it went into a screensaver, the BSOD was the picture. And what happened was, as they were in the classroom, the computers were all on, a poor substitute was in my room, and like a cascading effect throughout the room, BSOD, 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 all around the room, all the computers got the BSOD. Well, the poor sub freaked out, as one would expect. Got my co-teacher. My co-teacher was like, "What's going on?" Anyways, long story short, I show up the next day, coming back from A&M, and the principal, who's a great man, he's like, "Hey, Scott, come here for a second." And I go, "What?" He goes, "This is what happened yesterday in your classroom." Well, apparently me laughing was not the proper response to that one. Anyways, good fun, little pranks. So that's the BSOD, the blue screen of death. So we talked about system logs, right, a second ago. So how do you check a Windows system logs? Well, you open up the run window. You can press the Windows key and R. You type that command and click OK. Now, there's other ways to get to Event Viewer, but that's one of the fastest ways to do it. In the Event Viewer window, you can expand out the Windows log menu, and you have different categories, as you can see in the graphic. You have things for applications, security, setup, system, and forwarded events. And if something happens bad on your computer, it is kept in there. It's a log of what is going on. So, sluggish performance. Let's say your computer is just running really slow. It just takes forever to do things. It just pauses, and you get the idea, right? So sluggish performance. So what could be causes of sluggish performance? Well, too many startup applications and processes. Maybe you have too many things loading when the computer boots up. Now, I know for my computer, for example, my home computer, I've got Discord, I have Steam, I have Teams, and all of them want to be started up when you turn the computer on. Well, you don't need them all to start up. So if you have too many programs that are trying to start when you turn the computer on, it's going to take a while. You could be running too many applications. So let's say that on my computer right now, I have multiple applications. So I've got OBS, right, doing the recording. I've got the Google Studio. I've got PowerPoint. I've got a Steam Deck application. I've got a Logitech application for the microphone. Let's say now I also open up Photoshop, and I open up Adobe Captivate, and then I also run Cyberpunk in the background. Well, of course, things are going to slow down. You've got too many things open. Now, granted, you can do a lot more now. You can have a lot more things open because Windows has gotten better at kind of putting things to sleep-ish. But if you have a bajillion things open, or maybe you're somebody who likes to have 100 tabs open on Chrome, or heck, let's be honest, if you have Chrome open, it's going to consume system resources. So maybe you've got too many applications. Maybe you don't have enough RAM. Maybe there's not enough RAM installed in your computer. And of course, the fix to that is buy more RAM. Maybe you've got malware. Maybe you've got something running in the background that you're not aware of. Maybe you got some little nasty something who's turned your computer into a zombie doing things you don't know it's doing. Maybe you need to do updates and patches. Maybe your computer's out of date. Could be your disk is defragmented. This was a very common problem back in the early days of hard disk drives. And you could just have out-of-date device drivers. So there's different ways to fix things. One of them is the troubleshooter. Now, I was not really a fan of this particular program, but they made it quite a lot better than the old days. And so I would say start here, or this is one of the places you should start, is by running Windows Troubleshooter to see what's going on, see if there's any problems. Maybe you need to reinstall a driver, things like that. Of course, if it's a RAM problem, upgrade your RAM. Remove programs that are not used. If you have got a program on your computer you haven't used in over a year, maybe consider uninstalling it. Of course, run anti-malware. Now, I can tell you, one of the things I always do when I was working on computers is if somebody brought in a computer and it was running weird, it was running slow, my first thought always was malware. That was always my first assumption. And I wouldn't do any other troubleshooting steps to a computer until I ran anti-malware software, because I want to make sure this computer's clean, because you could do all these other steps. But if you got malware running in the background, you're spinning your wheels. So for me, one of the first things I always do to a computer is I'll run anti-malware software in there just to make sure the computer isn't got any nasties hiding in the background. You can defrag the drive. Again, this was a much more common method when we had hard disk drives. And check for updates. You'd be amazed, by the way, at how many times problems mysteriously go away with a software update. Probably because they're fixing a bug that was in that software. All right, so let's talk about boot problems. So boot problems are your computer just doesn't boot, right? It takes forever to boot, or it doesn't boot at all. And boot problems can be a hardware issue, they can be BIOS drivers, or they can be operating system issues. So hardware, nothing starts when you push the power button. The hard drive isn't seen, the CPU or motherboard is broken. You cannot fix a boot problem with software if the hardware is bad. So if, for example, your hard drive isn't plugged in correctly, let's say the cable is broken, let's say your hard drive is broken, let's say that there's the power supply is broken. These are hardware issues that need to be fixed before you start playing with the other stuff. So make sure it's not a hardware issue first. BIOS and drivers, misconfiguration of hardware in BIOS, BIOS UEFI passwords, the wrong drive is set as the boot device. So let's say you have multiple hard drives and you have the wrong hard drive set in your BIOS UEFI to boot from. Well, of course, it's not going to find the operating system. It's looking in the wrong place. And finally, maybe the boot problem is caused by the operating system. Maybe your system files have been corrupted. The files needed to boot the computer, let's say they got destroyed in a malware attack. So system files are corrupted, the drive hasn't been partitioned or formatted correctly. Okay, so we looked at boot problems. Let's talk about frequent shutdowns. Your computer just shut down with no reason. Now, again, part of the joy of working on computers is things happen. And a shutdown can occur. I mean, the computer hiccups from time to time, okay? That doesn't mean there's necessarily anything wrong with it. It just maybe having a bad day. But when it's frequently and it's hitting you at the very wrong time, then you could have a problem that you should look into. So assuming that the frequent shutdowns isn't hardware related, in other words, your power supply is providing the right amount of power, your computer's not overheating, assuming the hardware is good, what else could be causing frequent shutdowns? Well, you might have something called fast startup, sleep mode, or driver problems. So taking a quick look at fast startup. Now, you got to remember something. Back in the old days, okay, when we had hard disk drives, that was all we had. And there was no solid state drives. It was only hard disk drives. We were trying everything to make these things boot faster. I remember, again, back in the old days, being able to turn my computer on, going and brewing some coffee, Dunkin' Donuts, like that stuff, also like Bones, brewing coffee, coming back to my computer, and my computer would finally finish booting. These were not just turn it on and go. I'll tell you what, you kids today, you have it so lucky. But we would have to, it was the thing. You'd boot the computer, you go take care of business, you come back and the TV or, the computer would be working. So they were trying to do different things to speed up the boot time to get you into that computer faster. And so fast startup was one of those ideas. Fast startup only loads what you need to get up and running. It may not load everything that the computer needs to actually run. And having fast startup enabled was one of the go-to fixes for spontaneous shutdowns, because fast startup could cause problems with the computer itself. So you can enable or disable fast startup by going to Control Panel, looking at hardware and sound, looking for your power options, choose what the power button does, change settings that are currently unavailable, and then checking or unchecking that box. So that is how you either enable or disable fast startup. And as far as the control panel goes, we're looking at in the kind of the warm and fuzzy default view. All right, so services not starting. Services are background processes that will run to support different system functions, programs, and other functions, okay? This is kind of the pillars that hold these other programs up. It allows these programs to run. Services are there to help them work. And the computer, they can start when the computer boots up or when a program requires them to run. And if the service doesn't start, then the program itself may not work. So when a service doesn't start, then the features that require the use of that service are going to have a problem. Sometimes you'll get an error message. Some other times the programs or features just might not start correctly. So what could be the causes of services not starting? Well, you could have corrupt system files. You could have service dependencies not running. So one of the things we used to do back in the old days, again, to help speed up the boot process, is you would go into a program called msconfig, and you would turn off certain startup programs, and you could also turn off certain startup services. And if you clicked the wrong one, if you disabled the wrong one, then certain programs wouldn't run at all. And so we had to go back in and reconfigure stuff. So you need to make sure that the dependencies, because services can also depend on other services, make sure that they're running correctly. You might have a lack of permission. You might have incorrect configuration. Again, malware or conflicting software. Have I said yet, personally, before I do any work in an operating system that has issues, I'm always going to run malware first. I don't like to spin my wheels trying to fix a Windows issue when it really was a malware issue. So again, Mr. Ford's advice to you is whenever you're dealing with an operating system problem, always run your malware checking first. Make sure there's no nasty little bugs on it, okay? Registry issues. We'll talk about registry at the end of this particular series. Windows update issues and hardware or driver problems. All right, this is always fun. Applications crashing. Sometimes programs crash. Again, one of the wonderful things about working in computers is sometimes things go kaboom. So maybe an application crashes. This is not uncommon. For example, PowerPoint will crash most likely once during this live stream. It's when it happens continually. It does it over and over again that you have to figure out why this is happening. So the application could crash to desktop, CTD, freeze, cause an unexpected shutdown, or restart your computer. Causes could be the application is more resource intense than your device can handle. You might have corrupt program files. You might have a known bug. Again, there's that malware again. And of course, you could have hardware issues. For my particular case, when it comes to PowerPoint crashing, I think it has to do probably with OBS broadcasting this stuff. So this one's an easy one. Low memory warning. If you get a low memory warning, guess what? You're low on memory. Okay, the system is running out of RAM. It could be that the applications are using too much memory, or that you have too many applications running at once. If you have a good amount of RAM and your system still has a problem, Consider shutting down applications that you're not using. And again, maybe don't run 20 tabs of Chrome at the same time. And of course, if you don't have enough RAM, just go buy more RAM. Okay, RAM has become incredibly cheap. We have an entire unit previously covered talking about RAM specifically. This is a weird one. Okay, this is one I had to go back through my archives and pull information on. So this is a USB controller resource warning. Now, you have in charge of USB devices these controllers, and you have only so many devices that a controller can support. It's like 127 devices. And it also has to provide electricity. When USBs were first making the scene, yeah, you might have had to go and manually configure the USB settings. You might have had to keep an eye out for things. But as USB has become much more advanced, much more sophisticated, along with the operating system, this is not nearly as much of an issue as it used to be. But still, let's take a look at this, okay? So USBs, like I said, have become a very reliable and convenient way to connect peripheral devices. If you get this warning, this happens when the system's USB controller encounters conflicts or errors with resources it needs to function correctly. Again, in the old days, we used to have to configure IRQs and DMAs and all sorts of weird things that we don't have to worry about anymore in the world of computer repair. But if you still have this warning, this is where you go. Users can get error messages, hardware not being recognized correctly, or the device malfunctioning. And we are in our device manager under Universal Serial Bus Controller, and there is a list. All right, let's talk about system instability. System instability can show in different ways. Okay, this basically means your system is not stable, right? It's teeter-tottering, it's wobbling, it's not quite working right. You've got an instability in your system. So it can show up in a lot of different ways, like crashing, BSODs, shutdown, and other stranger things. That usually doesn't happen in a vacuum. Something major was changed. So this doesn't just pop up usually. Something had to have been done to the computer. Something usually major has happened to the computer to cause your system to become unstable. So was there a big update? Were there patches? Did you install a new hardware device? Again, these are big things. It's usually not, oh, you just installed a new game or you're working in a new document. These are usually big changes that can make your computer just kind of get wonky. You can, to fix this, go back to something known as last known good image, or running something called the SFC, or the System File Checker. If no operating system is found, this means that just what it says, you can't find the operating system. This could be caused by a bad or missing storage device. Okay, if you pull out the hard drive, no system found. No kidding, no operating system is found. You don't have a hard drive where it's at. Malware, once again, could have destroyed the boot records. And you can also have a misconfiguration of your BIOS or your UEFI. Again, there's that malware. Scan those computers first, folks. You'll save so much time. All right, profile loading. So in modern Windows, users have profiles, right? When you log into your computer, you click on your profile usually. It's usually your name or something else. And on the local machine, if that's what you're using, your profile is stored on the local machine, the computer that you're working on. If you are in a business environment, chances are your profile is stored on a server somewhere. So what is going on when your profile is just taking forever to load? Well, profiles can be kept, like I said, on a server or the computer itself. Possible causes of a slow profile load could be you have a corrupted user profile. Something happened in your profile that's corrupted the information. If you're roaming, meaning that it's handled by a server somewhere on a network and it's not on the local machine, it could be caused by a slow network connection. Now, for example, in the classroom, when you log into a computer for the very first time, right? That computer, you've never been on that computer, you're logging in for the very first time. Typically, those take a little bit longer to load because it's downloading your profile from a server somewhere. But if you're on the same computer and it's taking forever, again, check your network connection. You could have security software causing interference. Your profile is bloated, meaning it's larger than normal. And of course, you could have disk issues. Time drift. We talk about time drift when we talk about BIOS. If your computer is an hour ahead, hour short. If it's off by exactly hour or hours, then your most likely cause is you are in the wrong time zone, or you have daylight savings time not enabled, or you might have it disabled depending on where you're at. So if they're exactly hours fast or hours slow, that's usually a misconfiguration in the operating system. If, however, it's missing not exact hours, like minutes and hours, but it's not exactly an hour fast or an hour slow, then chances are it's a CMOS battery that is going bad. Now, I will tell you, I've been playing with computers for quite some time, 25 plus years. I have never personally run into, I take that back. I think I've had to change a CMOS battery twice in my entire life. And both times the computer was so old that it was a moot point. The computer had to be tossed anyways. So, but if you're off, not exactly hours, then check your CMOS battery. Okay, as an FYI, there are two files in Windows 10 responsible for finding the boot devices. You have the boot manager and the boot configuration data. All right, I wanted to keep this relatively short. So this is how long is this video? This is under 30 minutes. I want to keep them more a little bite-sized. I see at least one more section, if not two more parts to this particular lecture on troubleshooting operating systems. So maybe I'll make another one today. Maybe I'll make another one tomorrow. We'll see. But otherwise, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have fun studying out there. And goodbye for now.